Welcome to the Create a Life That Is Beautiful podcast, your go-to resource for personal development and coaching. I'm your host, Leticia Ringe, and I'm so glad you're here. Welcome back to the podcast, everyone. I'm Leticia Ringe, your coach and host, and on today's episode, we're going to be talking about cyclical business, which is all about working with your hormonal or menstrual cycle in your business. I'm so excited to dive into this subject with you all today because it has been years since I've spoken about cyclical business and working with your body and your menstrual cycle in your business. This is a topic that I first began talking about back in 2018 because when I started my business in 2017, one of the primary reasons I chose to start a business was because I wanted to work with my body and my menstrual cycle, which was my current hormonal cycle, in my business. I wanted to do this because about 2 years before that, in about 2015, I listened to a podcast episode on The Lively Show with Bella, who was back then Jess Lively, and an interview she did with Elisa Vitti, who is the founder of Flow Living, F-L-O Living. And in that episode, I learned for the first time that as a woman, we have 4 distinct hormonal phases that make up our menstrual cycle. Prior to this, I thought a menstrual cycle just meant you have a period and that's it. In that episode, I learned that we have 4 hormonal phases that make up the menstrual cycle. We have our menstruation, we have our follicular phase, our ovulatory phase, and our luteal phase. I then went on to learn more about the menstrual cycle and how these 4 hormonal phases are also likened to 4 seasons. And when we work with the different seasons in our hormonal/menstrual cycle, we support ourselves to thrive in life and in work. If we support our bodies through the exercise and the foods we eat according to the season we're in right now, we actually quite naturally move into a creative phase in our lives, which make up the 4 phases of the creative process and cycle. And so when we work with our bodies and we support it and care for it in the way the current season we're in needs, we access almost a creative gift. And this is something instead we've been taught to try to force ourselves into rather than it naturally occurring through the process of actually supporting our bodies with where they are. Now, up until that point, I had thought I just needed to care for my body in the same way every single day. And I wondered why at various points within every month of my overall menstrual cycle, I really struggled. I would get sick time and time again. I'd need to work from home because I was so exhausted. And then that was something that was bad because it looked like I wasn't doing anything. It was so hard to deal with period pain and lots of different symptoms that really zapped my energy and to feel like I just could never get on top of what was needed to operate in work. And so once I learned the reason is because you're actually working in a system that's been designed for the 24-hour male hormonal cycle, when most women during their working years are experiencing a 28-day plus or minus menstrual cycle, which moves through the same 4 creative phases and 4 different ways of supporting and caring for your body over the course of about a month rather than over the course of a day, everything started to make sense on why I just could never get ahead, why I never felt like I was thriving, and why it certainly wasn't feeling sustainable. I was often physically burned out as well as mentally and emotionally. And so I learned, well, obviously this is going to happen because you're working in a way that's not designed for you to thrive. So once I had this information, I went in deep. I learned everything I could about the menstrual cycle, about working with the 4 different seasons, about working with the creative process our body naturally moves us through. And then I went on years later in 2020 to certify as a menstruality leader with the Red School, which is one of the leading education providers from a spiritual and creative lens on on the menstrual cycle and also working with the different hormonal phases of a woman's body. They also do a lot of work on menopause, and it's such an amazing organization. And I highly recommend you read the founders of Red School, Alexandra Pope and Shani Hugo Wurlitzer, their incredible book called Wild Power: Discover the Magic of Your Menstrual Cycle and Awaken the Feminine Path to Power. So let's go back again to 2017 when I decided to quit my job in law and start my business. I made that decision because I realized that working in the corporate world at that time was not going to allow me to work in the way I needed to in order to thrive in my work. At that stage, I was working in legal recruitment, which I did for a year and a half between transitioning from being a lawyer into running my own business. And so I was in a new working environment in London, one of the biggest cities in the world, where you'd think you'd have some of the most progressive opportunities and knowledge and understanding when it comes to how a workforce can work in the most productive way. But of course, back then, this wasn't common knowledge. Even for your average woman, this wasn't common knowledge. Take me, for example. I had no idea until 2 years earlier. And usually I'd tell every woman I knew about, and it was the first time they were hearing about it too. So you can imagine in the corporate environment, it also was not knowledge that the people running the organization I was working at had access to. And what I didn't realize at that time was that that's because partly it was my job to educate and inform them. But instead, I wanted to feel safe to talk to my managers, to talk to the management team about what I needed. And I just didn't. It wasn't the environment for that. So I decided I'd take matters into my own hands, and I needed to start my own business so that I could work in a way where I could thrive, because I knew my skills were being wasted in the corporate world because I was not able to work in a way that supported my body and my creativity to thrive. At that stage, I always struggled to get things done. I could not complete projects. Once I started my business and began working in a way where my body could thrive and I was supporting the current season of the hormonal phase I was in within my menstrual cycle, which naturally moved me into one of the 4 key phases of the creative process, I then became so efficient, so productive, and for the first time in my life, I began seeing myself completing project after project. It was wild. I created a website. I created a blog. I did a blog every single week. I then went on to create a podcast. I created my first course, which was called Embrace Your Feminine Essence, one of the modules in which I taught women how to work with and support their menstrual cycle or their hormonal cycle and bodies as women. I went on to create so many things. I blew my own mind because I struggled so much as a lawyer, even though, of course, I was always working and achieving a lot. I was never able to complete and achieve at the level I knew I was capable of until I started working in this way. And so that's why cyclical business became a huge part of what I teach women in business when I went on to coach on business. Cyclical business was one of the key pillars of my holistic business framework. And I've been teaching women how to work with their menstrual cycle and how to naturally move into the creative process in a powerful, effective, and highly sustainable way by working with their hormonal cycle and their bodies in this way. And in today's episode, I'm going to be sharing more about what that looks like and how this supports you in your business and leadership, and why you need to know this so that you can support yourself, you can support your clients, especially if any of them are women or girls, and so you can support the people that you work with and possibly lead and manage to work in the most effective way for them. Because even though it might look like learning something new and operating in a slightly different way to the way we've been socialized, you will experience great results because of working with this system. So let's talk about it. Before I dive into the rest of today's episode, I want to remind you that I'm currently enrolling into World Class, my hybrid one-to-one business coaching and mastermind program. This is for you if you're a woman in business or if you're a woman working in the coaching and personal development industry. Over 5 months, beginning on the 14th of July, 2025, we'll be working together in a one-to-one capacity and in a small group mastermind to support you as you take your business and leadership to its next level. We'll be taking, of course, a holistic approach to your business and leadership journey. We'll be looking at your life as a whole, making sure it is thriving and supporting you so that you feel fulfilled. We'll be looking at your business and the strategic and practical elements needed to make sure you're also thriving in your business and moving towards your business goals in the best possible way for you. We'll also be looking at your expertise and craft, moving you through an intentional professional development process so that you're getting better at what you do and so that your craft is being supported to continue moving you towards leading within your niche and industry. This is how we stay competitive. We'll also be looking at your core offer or offers in your business to make sure they are the best they can be. We'll also be looking at your relationship with growth and transformation, working with your mind, your body, and your intuition to make sure you're moving through the growth and transformation journey in the most easeful way you can, and most importantly, that you're maintaining a positive reference point and relationship with growth and transformation so that you're not unconsciously avoiding growth and transformation, and instead you're leaning in without adding more discomfort to the journey so that you can have a more easeful experience of growth and transformation in business and in life, and also so that you can support your clients in the best possible way. Because like we talked about in the previous episode, if unconsciously we have a negative reference point with growth and transformation, when we see our clients struggling throughout their journey, which is actually a marker of progress and success, we might beat ourselves up and tell ourselves we're doing something wrong, and our capacity to support our clients through a growth and transformational process is limited. And it's not sustainable. There'll be a part of you that wants out because you see it as really hard. Instead, you've got to have a positive and at the very least a neutral relationship with growth and transformation so that you can expand your capacity to support your clients. And this is what creates sustainability in the work that you do and also along your business and leadership journey. Finally, we look at what you need as a woman, as an individual, and as a human to thrive. We work with feminine leadership principles, which are about looking at you holistically, looking at your business and life holistically, looking at your role in the ecosystem of your business, looking at the 3 systems you work with, your body, mind, and your intuition, and how they each need to be supported in business, looking at your zones of genius and what you naturally and uniquely bring to the business and having you work more in that rather than forcing yourself to try to be everything and do everything in your business, which will just lead you to being burned out and not doing as good a job as you can. We support you to take more of that leadership perspective in your business. How can we support it in the best possible way with the right community and people? And we also look at working in the most sustainable way you can, which means working in a cyclical way in your business that works with your body and your current hormonal cycle, which might be the menstrual cycle, or it could be menopause, perimenopause, postpartum, or pregnancy. No matter what's happening with your body and your cycle, we're also always working with your current capacity and the current season you're in within yourself and your business. Maybe it's growth, maybe it's maintenance, maybe it's a rest and relaxation season. We're always working with your actual capacity energetically and making sure your business model and the way you're operating is working in the best way we can to support you to move forward powerfully, but also in a way that sets you up for long-term success, because we're in this for the long term. And so we need to make sure that you are always supported with exactly where you are right now. Life is long. We're going to have ups and downs. Things go on, and you deserve to be supported in every season. And that's what World Class, my hybrid one-to-one and business mastermind and leadership program is for. So if you'd love to know more, head to leticiaringe.com/she's world class. Follow the links to book in your application call, and then you and I will get on a call and discuss exactly what's happening and how World Class can support you. Okay, now back to the episode. So cyclical business is part of feminine leadership. You're not going to learn this from someone who is not thinking about feminine leadership and how we can thrive as women in work and in business. Feminine leadership to me is looking at leadership in a way that is much more holistic and also community focused. We're looking at having the whole ecosystem thrive in the best possible way. And in order for the ecosystem to thrive, it means that each individual in the ecosystem needs to thrive too. So we take more of this collective and holistic approach to the way we look at leadership and your business. And one of the primary tools I use to achieve this is what I call cyclical business. And in essence, what we're doing is looking at each woman or each person who works within your ecosystem. And at the very least, there'll be one person, and that will be you. So we always start with you because you're the leader of your business. And we want to look at where your body is right now within its hormonal cycle. We want to do this so that we can understand what your body needs to thrive right now within its hormonal cycle, and even more granular than that, today within the season and phase of your hormonal cycle you're in right now. And we want to do this because naturally, when you support your body to be in the season of its hormonal cycle it's in right now, a creative gift emerges. And this creative gift is one of the 4 phases of the creative process. So instead of trying to force yourself to be in a creative phase, you can instead allow yourself to be in a creative phase that naturally emerges through supporting your body. You can then design your projects so that they have a timeline that works with your body and how it moves through the different seasons of your hormonal cycle. This allows you to start and complete creative projects in an easeful way that works with the rhythm of your body, so that you move through the 4 distinct phases of the creative process, not missing any phases, and effectively and sustainably completing your projects. All it begins with is working with where your body is right now. So, cyclical business is part of feminine leadership. It's also part of the 5th pillar of my world-class model for leading, growing, and running world-class businesses. And what it's doing is allowing you to work like a woman, to lead like a woman, and to grow like a woman, because that's what you are. So let's start with you. The very first thing we want to do is work out which hormonal cycle you're in right now within your body. Now, there are 5 key hormonal cycles you might be experiencing, and you'll only be experiencing one of these at a time. The first is a menstrual cycle. So if you're in the menstrual cycling years of your body, i.e. you're not pregnant and you're not in perimenopause or menopause, then you are experiencing a menstrual cycle. Unless you haven't experienced a menstrual cycle yet and you haven't reached menarche, but that would be very uncommon. The second hormonal cycle you experience as a woman is pregnancy. When you're pregnant, you're not experiencing a menstrual cycle, but your body is still experiencing its own hormonal cycle as your body prepares for the birth of your babe. The third hormonal cycle we experience is postpartum. During postpartum, again, you're not experiencing a menstrual cycle. You're also not pregnant, but your body is in postpartum and experiencing its own hormonal cycle. The fourth hormonal cycle we experience is perimenopause. This is the transition phase between your menstrual cycling years and menopause. Perimenopause can last a long time for women, and it's often not talked about, but your body is moving through its own hormonal cycle during perimenopause. The fifth and final hormonal cycle is menopause itself. Now, even though we spend decades in menopause as women, for some very strange reason, we seem to know very little about menopause. And so I really encourage all of us as women to go ahead and research menopause right now, even if it's many, many decades away for you, so that you know exactly what to expect when you inevitably reach this hormonal cycle for yourself. And let's be proud about our different hormonal cycles because they all serve a purpose and they are all so natural. Now, arguably, your menstrual cycling years are actually preparing you ultimately for menopause. And so from a more spiritual lens, which is what the Red School teach, you are actually preparing your body spiritually for one of the most spiritual phases of your life of all, which is menopause. So the idea is if you can support your body through your menstrual cycling years in the best way you can, you'll actually prepare yourself to have the best experience of both perimenopause and menopause as a result of that support. So we really do want to learn everything we can about our hormonal cycle and the menstrual cycle, as well as how to support yourself through pregnancy, birth, and postpartum, so that we can also support ourselves in the best possible way when we inevitably reach perimenopause and menopause. Okay, so now you know what the 5 hormonal cycles are. Identify which hormonal cycle is relevant to you right now. I'll use me as an example, and right now I'm in my menstrual cycle, hormonal cycle. Okay, so once you know which hormonal cycle you're in, you then want to look at the different hormonal phases within your hormonal cycle. And to do this, I'm going to talk about the menstrual cycle. Now, you can go ahead and look up the different hormonal phases happening during pregnancy, happening during postpartum, perimenopause, and menopause. No matter which hormonal cycle you're in, your body is going to mimic one of these 4 hormonal phases we find ourselves in during the menstrual cycle in terms of the inner season. So let me explain more. If we look at the menstrual cycle, there are 4 hormonal phases. There is menstruation, which is when you have your period. Then there is the follicular phase, which is right after your period. Then we go into ovulation, which is the middle of your menstrual cycle. The peak, it's when you ovulate, and then we go into the luteal phase, which usually is the longest part of the overall menstrual cycle. This is typically when your body experiences PMS symptoms, which we all think is normal, but actually is arguably a result of the fact we're not supporting our bodies to thrive in the way they need during the relevant hormonal phase we're in within our menstrual cycle. Now, during the follicular phase, you have an increase in hormones, most notably testosterone. And during the luteal phase, you have an increase and a decrease in various hormones. And so your body feels like it's on a little bit of a roller coaster. Now, all of this is perfectly designed. None of it is a mistake. It's all meant to be happening. The mistake is actually that we don't support ourselves with what our body needs in each of these seasons. Instead, we just keep wishing that it's different. So this is where looking at our 4 hormonal phases as inner seasons comes into play and makes everything so much easier. What you want to do is think about the outer seasons. So when we're in winter, spring, summer, and autumn outside in the world, you want to think about how you naturally feel during those seasons and what your body most craves. This is what your body is actually going through internally every single cycle you experience. So in a menstrual cycle, usually your cycle is around 28 days. Now, it may be shorter than that. It may be longer than that. It doesn't matter. Work with whatever length your menstrual cycle is, which means the day you get your period to the day before your next period. Now, during that menstrual cycle, your body moves through the 4 hormonal phases we just talked about, and you can liken each of these hormonal phases to an inner season. Your menstrual phase is inner winter. Your follicular phase is inner spring. Your ovulation or ovulatory phase is inner summer. And your luteal phase is inner autumn. So think about how you feel when it's winter outside, and then think about how you feel when you're experiencing a period. It's likely what you're craving and what your body needs in terms of self-care and support is very similar. Now, we go even deeper than this. When you naturally care for your body to be in the inner season it's currently in, you also access naturally a creative gift. And this gift is part of the overall creative process, which is how we bring a project from start to finish. During inner winter, if you rest and relax, which is what your body is craving to rejuvenate and restore itself, which is why you're so tired during your inner winter, your menstrual phase, you will actually create space in your brain to receive new ideas, clarity, to make decisions, especially big decisions. This is the start of the creative process. It's when we begin with an idea. Then you move naturally into the follicular phase, which is your inner spring. This is when you get a boost of testosterone and now you're ready to re-emerge. But you're not at the peak of your cycle. You're ready to start taking action and moving forward again. But it's likely you actually want to do this in a slower and also a more inward way. So not necessarily having a lot of people around. This is when you start to take your idea and bring it into reality. You want to get to work on bringing the idea from inside your mind into your physical reality. So you start working on it. Then you move into the ovulation phase of your hormonal cycle, which is inner summer. This is when you're at peak energy of your cycle. Your left and right brain are communicating in the best possible way, and you want to get out and be around people. You want to collaborate and be seen. This is when you naturally want to start talking about your idea and your project. This is where you can actually take and receive feedback in the best possible way and use that to go back and incorporate that into your projects. It's also a great time for marketing and running events and generally just being out and about and around people. You're communicating in the best possible way you can and will throughout your cycle. Then you naturally shift into the luteal phase, which is your inner autumn. This is where your hormones start to change quite a bit. And so there's a lot of fluctuation. It can feel like a roller coaster. You can get really tired and then you get a lot of energy. And this phase is moving you to completion. It's also moving you to be really honest with yourself about what you're needing, about where your boundaries have been crossed, about what might need to be edited or changed. And so again, there is this energy that's really asking you to focus and get SHIT done, which I like to call GSD. So this is when we naturally want to complete our projects. We also want to edit them, but it's not a good time to make big decisions because we can be quite critical with ourselves. But some of this criticism is good. This is what gets a project into creative excellence. It's just better to let yourself decide on anything big once you're back in your inner winter again, which is when you're going to be a lot calmer and you're going to more easily get clarity on those big decisions. So this, my beautiful friends, is the creative process. You start, you get an idea, you work on the idea and bring it into the physical form. You talk about it, you market it, you share, and then you edit it, bring it to a place of excellence and bring it to completion. You can bring one creative project through the 4 creative phases of the creative process easily when you support your body to be where it is in its current hormonal phase. You can even work with bigger projects where each month you're cycling through these phases as you write a draft of your book, as you then move through the second draft of your book, then the third draft of your book, and on and on and on. You can also simply structure your business so that when you look at what you need to do over the course of a month, you're optimizing where you schedule certain projects to be so that it's working with the current hormonal and creative season and phase you're going to be in at that time. It also just helps you to be way more kinder to yourself in the moment because you understand what your strengths and your weaknesses are during the phase you're in. You understand how to support your body. And so if even all you do is support your body, you're going to set yourself up with more energy to be accessed throughout the course of your cycle. So they are the 4 inner seasons and the 4 creative phases of the menstrual cycle. Now, if you're not experiencing a menstrual cycle and you're experiencing any of the other 4 hormonal cycles I talked about before, what you can do is find out by inwardly reflecting on your body where you're at right now in these phases, particularly likening where you are to an inner season. And then you can look at what the associated creative season is. And you can find out how your body is cycling through these 4 phases right now. You can also go ahead and research what's actually happening hormonally during each of those 4 other hormonal phases so that you can better understand what's happening within your body and where your body might be right now. Now, for those of you who are in your menstrual cycling years, but you're currently on birth control, it's very likely the way you're experiencing these 4 hormonal phases is different. Usually what happens is your body gets stuck in the luteal phase. It's just there, and then you're given like a fake period each month. So you may feel that you're not connected to these 4 phases. Now, what you can do if that's you is, again, you can inwardly reflect on where you feel your body's at right now, and you can see if there is any cyclical nature happening for you. Then, for all of you who are not experiencing a menstrual cycle right now, or who are on birth control and are not feeling connected to the 4 hormonal phases I just talked about, what you can do is you can use the moon cycle. Because actually the moon cycle is mirroring the female menstrual cycle almost exactly. Now, the moon cycle actually lasts about 31 days. You have a new moon phase, you have a first quarter phase, you have a full moon phase, and you have a third quarter phase. Now, you can decide which aligns with you in the best possible way, but traditionally, the new moon phase was in a winter. This is when there was no moon in the sky, so it was dark, and it was a time for women to turn within, to rest, relax, and to rejuvenate. So that was in a winter, and most women were syncing up at that time in their local communities and experiencing their menstruation. First quarter phase is traditionally associated with inner spring, your follicular phase. Summer with the full moon, which is when there was the big bright moon in the sky and we're all out and about longer. We've got more energy. We're halfway through the cycle. So we're looking at the fruits of our labor, what we've grown since we planted our seeds. And then we move into the third quarter phase, which is preparing for completion of this cycle. Now, some people actually feel and experience their menstrual cycle during the full moon. And so they start there with inner winter instead and then align the rest of the moon cycle accordingly. Or some people just feel the most tired around the full moon, and so they choose that to be their inner winter. It really doesn't matter how you choose to do it. What matters most of all is that you recognize that you have changing seasons, changing needs. And when you support those changing needs and changing seasons, you naturally are creatively inclined to do something, to act, to create in a certain way. And this is always part of a longer and bigger creative process. And when you work with your body, you set yourself up to be the most creative human being you can. And honestly, we are all so creative. Now, there are so many more things that I could share on this subject, and I need to wrap this episode up now. So if you want to learn a little bit more, I do have a free menstrual magic journal. You can use this whether you're experiencing a menstrual cycle or not, as it also talks about using the moon cycle. This is about how to manifest with ease, working with your 4 inner seasons. You can head to leticiaringe.com/menstrual magic journal. I also want to remind you that I have a free online course called World Class, which is for you if you're a woman in business or a woman working in the coaching and personal development industry. In the 5th and final training in World Class, I talk more about cyclical business and feminine leadership and how to support you to thrive sustainably as a woman in business and leadership. You can access that at leticiaringe.com/World Class. So in summary, what I want you to understand is that you have distinct hormonal phases within your hormonal cycle. And these distinct hormonal phases all need to be cared for in a different way physically for your body to thrive. When you do that, you naturally move into and access a creative gift, which moves you through one of the key phases of the overall creative process. When you work in this way, you're working cyclically. You'll find patterns within your hormonal cycle which give you some predictability. And it also teaches you how to be adaptable and flexible to meet this current hormonal cycle, which may be a little bit different from the past, while also having some patterns and similarities. You learn how to naturally move through a creative process. You learn how to work and create sustainably. And you can use this system to plan ahead and to support yourself in real time. Now, I teach my clients how to do this. I've got a course called Cyclical Business where I go into way more detail about how to work in your business using your hormonal cycle. And when you're a client, you get access to this course. And it's one of the courses I offer in World Class, my hybrid one-to-one and business mastermind program. Now, to wrap up today's episode, I'm going to leave you with some journal prompts to help you implement everything we've learned so far. So the first question is, which season am I in right now? Winter, spring, summer, or autumn? And think about your inner season, not the outer season. Next question, what does my body need right now? Turn within and ask your body what it needs. Does it need rest? Does it want to reemerge? Does it want to collaborate? Does it want to focus and complete? What is it needing right now? Next question. When I provide my body with what it needs, what creative inclination naturally emerges? Do I get clear? Do I move forward? Do I get out there and be seen? Do I want to complete? What creative inclination naturally emerges? And use your own language. This is an inner self-discovery process. Next question, what season is coming up? And how can I support my body and creativity with that season ahead of time? So think about the season you're in right now and where this means you'll be moving to next, which would naturally, if it's winter, it would be spring. If it's spring, it would be summer. If it's summer, it would be autumn. If it's autumn, it would be winter. How can you support your body and creativity with the season coming up? And then finally, what would sustainable business look and feel like to me, and what are the benefits? Now, I want you to answer and consider this question because I think very often most of us haven't actually considered why sustainably doing our businesses would actually benefit us. But there are so many benefits. For me, I was able to access way more energy, vitality, magnetism, and radiance within myself. I'm now able to complete so much more, and I'm able to trust myself because I'm not constantly burning out and then fighting against my body. I'm able to teach other people how to do this. And not only does it give permission to other women, but it also gives permission to other men, because men are also moving through 4 different phases throughout their 24-hour hormonal cycle. And when they understand that, they can, instead of trying to do the same thing all day, every day, they can work with those different changing needs throughout their day too. And if they want to produce bigger projects, and they want to go deeper into a creative season like we naturally do as women, being in a specific season for about a week, they actually learn a lot from us about how they could do that for themselves. So there are so many benefits, and I want you to think about how this benefits you in business and leadership over the long run, like staying in business over the long run, being able to produce better products and services, being able to make more money, being able to be a better leader for your team and manager, being able to be a better leader for your industry and niche, and being able to access creative excellence, which is a phase of the creative process very few of us ever get to because we're unwilling to edit our projects because of what we make it mean. So there is just so much to benefit from. Okay, my beautiful friends, that's the end of today's episode. Once again, if you'd like to join me in World Class, my hybrid one-to-one and business mastermind and leadership program for 2025, I highly recommend you go and check out all the details at leticiaringe.com/she's world class and then book in your application call. We'll be enrolling until all places are taken, and I so look forward to working with those of you called to this experience. All right, my beautiful friends, you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you in the next episode. Goodbye. Thank you for listening to the Create a Life That Is Beautiful podcast, your go-to resource for personal development and coaching. To deepen your learning and practice, make sure you're subscribed to receive our community newsletter. Subscribe at leticiaringe.com/newsletter. And if you haven't yet left a 5-star review for the podcast, we ask that you please do that now so that this podcast can reach other listeners who also want to join us in creating a life that is beautiful.